Okay, High Cascade's policy is basically anybody under 18 has to wear a helmet at all times snowboarding. So regardless of if you're a pro snowboarder that comes through camp that's under 18, you have to wear one. And then skateboarding, no matter what age you are, you have to wear a helmet. So on snow, anybody under 18 has to wear a helmet. It's optional if you're over 18. And then skateboarding, regardless of the age, you have to wear a helmet. So that's the basic policy. And there's really no deviations from that or instances where it's not followed. Like we'll literally have campers that come through that are pro snowboarders that are paid to snowboard, and we make them wear a helmet just like you'd make any camper wear a helmet. But I guess there's literally no instance where anybody under 18 would be in our park not wearing a helmet. And it used to be, like I remember specific instances in the early days, because it started 2000 was the first year we implemented that policy, where people would, under 18, people were just bummed that they had to wear a helmet. And they're like, I don't wear a helmet back in my normal mountain. Why should I have to wear one here? So in the beginning, there definitely was some friction and people not used to wearing helmets. So when they came to camp and we made them wear a helmet, it was something they just weren't psyched about. But I think every year it gets less and less so. And nowadays it's just to the point where this is what people do. They wear helmets at their mountain during the winter. When they come to camp during the summer, it's just almost expected that they're going to wear a helmet. So, yeah. Yeah, I rode for about 15 years before it even occurred to me that, hey, maybe you should wear a helmet. Because growing up, skiing as a little kid, snowboarding after that, going for bike rides, doing just whatever we did, wasn't really part of like the helmet generation. But kids nowadays, they definitely come through camp, and that's just what they do. I mean, you see little kids on the street corner on a Razor scooter, and they've got helmets on from the time they're 3 years old, standing on those things. So it just becomes part of the wardrobe, part of the uniform, part of the process. Like they're gonna go out and skate or ride a BMX bike or go snowboarding, and they're grabbing their skateboard and their helmet. They're grabbing their bike and their helmet. Whereas when I was a kid, you would just grab your skateboard or you just grab your snowboard. It was never expected. I don't think people's skulls were necessarily any thicker back then, or like there's no biological reason for why it happens. It's just, I think that throughout time, more and more people are participating in these sports. So statistically, there's going to be more injuries. Those injuries get media coverage, and people just kind of wisen up. If you look back at like early days in football or hockey, sports like that, the old black and white footage, and those guys aren't wearing helmets. And back in the early days of the sport, they didn't even think like, we should be wearing helmets as we tackle each other, take pucks in the face. And then over time, you realize like, okay, it makes a whole lot of sense. So I think these sports are just so young that we're still in that learning phase that like, we can get hurt, seriously hurt, and or even worse. And so we should be wearing helmets. Yeah, no, I think in general as a camp owner where we have 200 plus kids come under our care for the duration of their stay, you'd almost like to have them in a helmet the whole time when they're eating, sleeping, skateboarding, snowboarding, doing whatever. So the fact that it is becoming more acceptable, more commonplace, more expected to wear a helmet makes it easier for us to not feel like we're imposing a rule that people aren't used to having imposed on them when they show up at camp. And so, it feels great to have kids wearing helmets up on hill. And I know right now our policy is just 18 and under have to wear helmets. I could see in the future that changing, getting a little more strict where anybody regardless of age has to wear helmets. But as of right now, I guess the notion is if you're a legal adult, you're old enough to make that choice if you want to protect yourself or not. And then anyone under 18 just has to wear one. So I think that maybe in the early days, like back in 2000 when we first imposed that rule, we were really making a difference of people weren't used to wearing helmets when they came to camp, and we started making them wear helmets. Then we were probably playing a role in it becoming not a cool thing to do. I don't think anyone ever putting a helmet on thinks that it makes it cool. I think now it's maybe just neutral, that whereas before you put a helmet on and you were the only one doing it, it just looked kind of dorky. now everyone does it, so it's just expected. Like I don't think anyone could probably make a helmet necessarily like a really cool thing, like a fashion trend or whatever. But yeah, certainly during the early days, I think camp helped build the momentum towards more and more people wearing helmets. It's funny, everybody that watches this piece has probably heard of Shaun White, especially this year after the Olympics. And that guy, honestly, probably has had more to do with helmets becoming acceptable in snowboarding than any other snowboarder, any other initiative out there. You think Shaun White, from the time that he was 6 years old when I first saw him, or he was 9 years old at the U.S. Open, he was out there riding just as kind of an exhibition. Like, look at this little kid go. And he had a helmet at the time that looked like this. He looked like a lollipop, like this big old helmet on him. But he grew up wearing a helmet. He's kind of the first of that generation of riders that wear helmets. So from the time he was 9 and he was in the media eye, straight up till 2010 when he was winning a gold medal, he did all of that wearing a helmet. So Shaun was a hero for some kids out there, especially a lot of the younger kids nowadays. And so they've watched him go from being a little kid to where he's at now, the whole time doing it in a helmet. And he really was one of the first riders that you show up at a contest and nobody would be wearing helmets, and Shaun was. And it was acceptable for him to do so because he was so young. Whereas some of the older guys might have got laughed at. Shaun wearing a helmet is like, yeah, he's 13 years old competing in this giant half pipe with all these guys, so it makes sense for him to have one. And it slowly just, the ideology shifted, and he's doing it growing up. He just never took the helmet off. So now he is the new generation of older riders, and he's still wearing his helmet in suit behind him. It's everybody just knows Shaun White. There's a whole slew of riders that are up around that level that were coming out around the same time, maybe less popular, but we're also doing it with a helmet on. So we're in our first generation of pro snowboarders that are setting a lot of those trends and tones that they came up their whole career wearing helmets. So it's kind of sad. You think back to even nowadays, there's film companies and film crews that won't film a rider because they're wearing a helmet. And I think that's actually probably less and less now. But rewind maybe 5 years ago, nobody was wearing helmets when they were going out filming for a snowboard movie. And yeah, there's film crews that specifically wouldn't film certain riders because they wore helmets. So even if they had great tricks, great style, they were a cool person, cool rider, the fact that they were wearing a helmet, it just was considered kind of goofy. And then you fast forward just a few years, and now there's quite a few riders that are going out there filming all winter for major video parts that wear helmets, and it's just not even questioned.